With Will on 531 PI.
You're listening to Pacific Mornings on 531 PI. Talofa, I'm William Terite, if you are just joining us. Now, the Ministry for Pacific Peoples is inviting feedback on its draft Delivering for Pacific Communities strategy, a refreshed plan to drive better outcomes for Pacific families in Aotearoa. Now, the strategy builds on Le Langa Fo and the Pacific Wellbeing Strategy, sharpening the focus on 5 priority areas: economic growth, health, housing, education, law and order. Joining me to discuss what this means and how it will be delivered is the Chief Executive of the Ministry for Pacific Peoples, Gerardine Clifford-Lidstone. A very good morning to you. Thanks for your time.
Good morning, William.
Look, give us a rundown of this strategy and perhaps its significance for Pacific communities.
Well, as you mentioned, the ministry's undergone a strategic reset, and what we're trying to do is just align things closer to the government's priorities and match them up with the long-term aspirations of Pacific peoples. So largely, as you mentioned, the areas that we believe have greatest impact: economic growth, health, housing, education, and law and order. Can I just say also that the consultation started on the 4th of September and ends this week. So we've received quite a bit of feedback, and we're really looking forward to just tapering that off towards the end of the week to make sure that we can get a really solid final strategy together.
Sure. So with that window of opportunity for consultation, is that about 3 weeks?
Yes, just over 3 weeks.
Okay. Given the strategy's significance then, I suppose, why such a short time frame?
I guess what we're trying to do is just manage the fiscal costs of everything, and we've provided a range of ways for communities to contribute. We've done some face-to-face, we've done some online, and I've gone out over the last week to talk to some of our leaders for that kind of more one-to-one feedback that sometimes people aren't as comfortable sharing in an open forum.
And I just want to perhaps reflect more on that window of opportunity to get feedback. I mean, is a 3-week window really enough, say, for elders, churches and language communities? How are you making it accessible, say, beyond online forms, if that is indeed how it's done?
Yeah, thank you. I think the main thing is these aren't relationships that aren't already established. We have got long established relationships. Admittedly, we won't be able to get around to everyone, but I think in the amount of time, I haven't got the exact number on me, but we have received quite a lot of comprehensive feedback already. So I am happy that we have received, good comprehensive feedback. It may not be in the way that we've been able to do it in previous years, but, as always, there are significant costs associated with engaging with our community. So we're looking just to get that balance of good feedback versus managing those costs.
Okay, and so I suppose what's the single biggest change this strategy is promising for Pacific families by 2027?
I think, look, I don't want to, I think that oversimplifies things, to be honest, because there's a number of significant challenges facing our community. What we'd like to see is to be able to contribute more deeply to the areas that our communities face the biggest challenge, and significantly in health, we've got disproportionate outcomes in education as well. And there are a lot of opportunities in the economic growth space which we'd like to kind of look to exploit, particularly because we have very entrepreneurial communities, and matching them up with those opportunities to create economic growth will be important. Also, when Pacific people are employers, they're more likely to employ our own community, so this is significant as well. So I don't want to say that we're going to focus in on making one change. I think there are a number of areas that we'd like to kind of shift.
Sure. Okay, and I suppose what gets deprioritised to kind of fund this focus, are there any trade-offs to this?
I think the biggest opportunity that we have is to really look at the data quality and the insights from our community. In terms of trade-offs, I think in periods of constraint, there is opportunities for innovation, and I think particularly in the data and digital space, with the shifts in the use of artificial intelligence, and I think we'll find opportunities to do things more efficiently.
Sure. And this isn't just a problem for MPP. I think it's just a broad problem in general for many ministries. But what's your South Island and provincial plan? So this isn't perhaps Auckland centric or say Wellington centric.
Yes, well, I spend quite a bit of time, and I've actually just spent some time in the South Island talking to our communities. You would have seen in Tokoroa and more recently in Oamaru and Timaru, closure of some of the main employers in the region. And there's some wonderful initiatives that have been undertaken, particularly in Oamaru, around micro-credentialing and broadening out the skill set opportunities for our Pacific communities that are working in those spaces. So I guess us getting alongside, firstly understanding what those experiences are, and supporting those providers that are working really well with those communities to look for new opportunities.
Indeed. All right, and just very quickly, in terms of, could you perhaps spell out what the first 90 day of action will look like after consultations closed, or what happens after that?
After consultation, we will be providing advice to the Minister on what communities have said. You've already alluded to, and I've listened to some fantastic interviews you've done over the last week and a half around the wider public service shift. So we'll just be staying engaged with that. And I think one of the biggest things over the last few days in my engagement with communities is this call for the ministry to be a bit more proactive in and showing leadership around pulling particularly some of our leaders together to talk about what that landscape looks like. So I'll be looking to do that in addition to finalising off the strategy. And then, of course, the last thing is to provide all that feedback to the Minister and our communities.
Certainly. Look, it'd be remiss of me not to ask, but you are, as I said to the Minister yesterday, both of you are presiding over the ministry at a time of great change. You're at the helm while there are cuts, while there are, reviews into its existence, etc. Just give me a bit of sense in terms of how it is to navigate that. I know you can't really speak to the specifics, but navigating all of that.
Well, I mean, I guess as a leader at this time, the main thing is that we accurately reflect the needs of the community, and that can be really challenging in times of austerity. But as I said, it also offers us a chance to look at innovation and to talk to our community leaders about the impact and what their views might be about going forward.
The prospect of a merger, though, I mean, could you elaborate or speak on that? Do you know any details?
Oh, look, I really admire your commitment to digging deep into this, William. But as the Minister pointed out yesterday, that largely sits with the Public Service Commissioner.
Certainly. And finally, just to give me a bit of sense in terms of staff morale, that's what I'm keen to also understand. I mean, let's be honest, I mean, it's important for our community that MPP exists. Many would argue in our community. So what's staff morale like at the moment?
Look, I've just come from doing a 2-week program where we looked deeply at the challenges on countries and jurisdictions into the future. And what we know is that change is going to be a constant. And so what we've been trying to do here, focusing at MPP, is to see change as a growth opportunity. For the last 2 years, change has largely been a grief moment because we've had to look at creating those efficiencies. But the future is going to be all about change, and whether that's, the jobs of the future that we don't know, it means that what we have to do is equip our staff to live in that change environment, which will be a constant for us. And our team do a fantastic job. They're working hard, and I just really like to thank them for their commitment to the community.
Certainly. Finally, before we wrap it up, why is the Ministry for Pacific Peoples important?
Well, we represent the voices of youthful community. We represent the voices of New Zealand, and making sure that that's visible is really important.
That is Gerardine Clifford-Lidstone. Thank you very much for your time this morning and for your mahi. That is the Chief Executive for the Ministry for Pacific Peoples. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you so much, William.